Welcome everyone. I'm Ken Kaban. So today's webinar is focused around streamlining identity and access management. So we're going to be focusing around that environment. So just a bit of background on myself. I'm one of the business consultants here at Power On. I lead some of the transformation activities. You may have seen my earlier webinar we did on your Microsoft 365 roadmap and strategy alignment. This leads on from that, and we're going to be basically delving into the specific areas around that. So in today's session, I'm going to cover a number of the features, technologies. There is way too much to cover all of this at once. So I'm going to just group some of these and just point out some things that can help you streamline it, have a think about it, some lessons learned from conversations and discussions and work we've done with other customers. We're going to cover some of the capabilities and hopefully it'll give you an idea of what you can achieve with that. There'll be tips all the way through this. Now, I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint. I'm going to actually jump around. So where I can, I'm going to go into the console or to the Microsoft Docs to just do it. But the whole idea and the whole focus here is if you've made or planning to make an investment in your Microsoft 365 E3, E5, understanding these technologies, right, and getting a good feel for what you can do to maximize that investment in these technologies will obviously help you in the long term. Now, please submit your questions in the chat, but I am on my own. So what we'll do is we'll collate the answers and we'll send the responses out with the webinar links to these slides. Okay, so let's just quickly cover some of the initial licensing. So today's focus is going to be around streamlining that identity and access element. And so we're going to be delving into the EM&S side of things, the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. As you can see, again, Microsoft has renamed it, so it's now Entra ID. Okay, so I'm going to cover some elements around just things like AUs, administrative units. I want to show how that feeds in with groups and dynamic groups. We'll then delve into some of the security aspects around your typical MFA, etc., but the evolution of MFA into passwordless, as well as elements of password protection, feeding that into conditional access and single sign-on. There's some new elements of authentication like SMS sign-in. I want to highlight some of those elements around that. I'll cover some of the reporting. There's some new features you may or may not be aware of around it. Not going to delve too much into these. This is more of an informational session, not a techie hands-on session. And at the end of that, I want to cover some stuff that's been announced recently that is quite interesting around app proxy and global secure access. On the E5 elements, want to make sure that everyone understands one of my favorite products out there is Defender for Identity. I want to highlight why this is a fantastic product that you should consider if you haven't already. It's one of the reasons I think it's a good reason to implement E5. There's some PIM stuff, privileged identity. I think a lot of people are aware of it. Just in case they're not, I'm going to cover some of those things, as well as some of the other components of Entra ID Plan 2. This is the step up from Plan 1. Okay. So now I'm going to go through a lot, but before I go through a lot of things, what I've done is I've captured a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you in bullet point, and I've put the hyperlinks in there. So everything I'm going to cover is going to be in the slide deck for you to easily consume. Might pretty it up later, but the raw facts, the raw information is going to be there, kind of thing. So that being said, let's put in our browser. And if you're not familiar, the new place is called entra.microsoft.com. This is basically your new home, kind of thing. So one of the things I wanted to cover around was your typical components in there now called administrative units. I'm not sure if a lot of people are using this because from initial conversations, a lot of people are syncing up that environment into Azure AD. So think of administrative units, or as I call them, AUs, the same as OUs in Active Directory. Now, there is a limitation of what it can do, but the purpose of this is for you to create administrative sections for your organization, like, for example, the London office admins. And so when we go there, we can manage specific users, groups, or devices, and we can assign specific roles into that environment. So you can see, for example, we can do help desk or support people that are there. There is an interesting capability that should get familiar with, is definitely, right, that you can actually stop the topward down flow of admin credentials of admins. So the people in London might be the only people that you want to manage the London office. So the key element around here obviously is that you can manage users, etc., and all that. Now there's another interesting element that I want to cover in groups. So a lot of people do a lot of assigned groups, and there's been some conversations around if people are using dynamic groups properly or not. So one of the things I've captured here for people is the ability to understand what those dynamic groups are. So if we just paste that along here, what I've captured is just understanding the rules and the methods for creating those dynamic group rules. So there's some handy little links that I provided in there that shows you how to create the syntax, the expression for rules. Okay. So definitely recommend that. Now, speaking of groups, there's some really useful things that people are probably not familiar with in groups. So if I go back to my admin console and just jump to groups, people should be aware and have a look. Make sure that in your group's general settings, you understand what these two sliders mean. So users can create security groups and users can create Microsoft 365 groups. Now, if you've got these set to yes, there's a number of things that you should be thinking of, right? Expiration is one of them. So this is really good for creating expiration for selected groups, okay? Of saying, giving it a year or so. And there's a reminder for the admin for that. The other thing is policies. So block words is one, but the main one is a naming policy. So we could, for example, add a prefix, and we could basically add a string and say GR or SGR, etc. if it's a security group. Well, we could suffix that, right, or prefix that in that sense. So strongly recommend having a good understanding of groups. Okay. Groups leads into an interesting bit for me, and I'm going to cover the topic. So I've got my Microsoft 365 maps here, and there's an element over here that I like to go around. So there's a lot of information around external identities. Okay, so there's two elements to think of it. There's basically identities with B2B or users, etc. So let's just get that link for a moment, and let's go into external identities. Oh, let me grab that one more time. Okay. Now, a lot of people are just using the M365 portal in its very basic element. It's going to lead on later in the webinar where I'm going with this, but would certainly recommend people get familiar with the cross-tenant settings. So in here, what you're trying to basically do is check what you're allowing, especially external users and groups, right? So inbound, what are they allowed to do? Okay, and outbound, right? Also, be familiar with the identity providers. For example, if you're using external IDs from say, a user type of thing, you can set up Google or Facebook or any other SAML type of identity provider. Anyone that's got a Microsoft account pretty much goes in. It's been built by default. Then the other one is to have a good understanding of your external collaboration settings. So we see this, that a lot of people have left this and the ability for users to create groups unchanged, or they haven't really understood this area. So strongly recommend people get familiar with these elements, especially when you're working with people outside your organization, and this is becoming more prevalent with teams, right? So people are sharing elements of it. Let's cover real quickly some other stuff that I want to go into, and go into password protection as an area. So now, password protection is the ability for Microsoft to basically make sure that users' passwords are aligned to best practices, looks up default global banned password lists, they're auto applied. You can actually define a custom banned list, etc. Okay, so password protection is a very nice element. A lot of people don't know that you can actually integrate this with your on-prem AD. So think of that password list, etc. Right. This is a nice little cheap way of basically applying the global banned password list, etc. Right. So I've put the link into the slides, but it'd be worth making sure that you understand the type of the proxy, the software you need to install, etc. And this gives you an idea of how it actually works. But the password protection policy is a nice way to extend back to on-prem the password protection product that you get from Entra. Now that's, in that sense, all well and good. The other one to be familiar with regarding passwords is for users themselves. So go back to our, let's do it here actually. We go back to our admin center. Now, how many people have applied self-service password reset to all versus a select group? It'd be good to understand, have you rolled this out? Because one of the things that is always evolving is these authentication methods. So I'll delve into that shortly, but there's a growing list of authentication methods that we can have. So I know for a fact that a lot of IT teams have enabled self-service password reset and have not looked at it for a couple of years, but things have moved on, as I'll cover shortly. Also, are you implementing this? I'm sure most customers have done it, but just in case, are you implementing this to back to on-prem right back? So there is again ways that you can set up so that users' passwords are written back to the on-prem AD. Okay, and there's again there's the AD Connect method, which everyone's familiar with, but there's other techniques as well. Okay. Also, be aware that if you're using, say, for example, B2B type of identities, right, external identities, which, for example, I myself have got a number of logins or capabilities and accounts with a number of customers and partners, I always forget. So always good to know that as long as I remember my credential, I've got the old password reset there. Now, speaking of authentication methods, let's just drill into that because I do want to cover something that we've been doing for a long time, which is basically the old MFA. Right? So MFA, we've been doing this for a number of years, and it's good to know, right, the different authentication methods out there, their level of security, their level of usability. Okay, and you can see that this list has grown over the years, especially things like FIDO2 keys have come in. I've put in a nice little handy, a little PowerShell script that would be useful for people to sort of like assess. So this will analyze, right, Azure AD users and make recommendations on how to use or improve their MFA configuration. So this is something that might be worthwhile understanding, because what we want to do is understand how we can help users, get to their devices without disrupting. There's a nice little table here that tells you, for example, what works as a primary authentication method, right? And what is the second for the second factor, whether it's for self-service password or for MFA, what you can use as the second factor. So this helps clarify, and be worth being familiar with it, how to do this. This has, created some challenges. Some IT departments have forgotten to create some contingency. Okay, so I've put in a link in here, basically just making sure that you've got a good access control strategy, right? It's a good way of making sure that if you've sort of like had disruptions, don't rely too heavily on one method. If that service or that method goes down, right, what's your resiliency plan? I've also put in some blogs because there's some really good, interesting articles that talk about, well, is it time to give up the phone for authentication, right? So this is the old authentication methodology of, sure, I'll ring you, I'll call you, etc. Well, what if I've got no reception, etc. Okay, so that leads, is going to lead to what we talk about as passwordless. But be aware that people are starting to ask those questions, and we're starting to see customers start implementing passwordless sign-ins. So this is, I suppose, where it's all going. So passwordless authentication, there's 3 key metrics that you want to understand. Okay, so with passwordless authentication, it's something you have. That might be your work laptop, that might be a phone, it could be a security device. That phone could, you can see, could be a work or a personal phone, etc. Right? And something you are or something that you know. So your fingerprint, something you are, your facial recognition, something you are, kind of thing. So this really provides a very nice, high security, highly convenient type of way of signing in. Okay, so there's a good little article on those 3 elements. Now, a lot of people want to implement Windows Hello for Business. This is more of a device metric, but just so people understand, the biometric and the PIN is tied to the device, to the Windows device. Okay, there's a nice little article on how that works. Okay, you can align this with seamless sign-on and PKI, so you can make it nice and convenient. I, for example, have forgotten my password, and I have to go to password reset once in a while. Okay, now a lot of people are already using the Microsoft Authenticator app. Right. And familiar with it. So the Authenticator app, you'll get this number, okay? And then you'll use a PIN or a biometric as well. So you'll punch in that number, use your thumbprint, and you can get through. And so that would be the extension of that onto Android, iOS type of devices. And the final element here is the FIDO2 keys. Now, if you do a Google search on this, there is a lot of security key identity providers, but I've provided a nice little link in here that basically gives you an idea what's out there, right? The methodology they use. And you're looking at about £20. So this is really, really good for those organizations that don't want to give a work phone just so that the end user can sign in to corporate environments. So a FIDO2 key is basically a USB or an NFC or a biometric based system that sits on a keychain. You can give it to the users. So which method is best? Well, again, that's open for debate and conversation, and depending on your organizational requirements, but is a nice little way that you can look at, map that out. So it gives a good understanding of passwordless authentication. Now let's change topic for a moment, and let's go to a bit of user self-service. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the self-service capabilities that is built into the system. One of the things that you may want to set up before you do that is you can actually customize that environment for the users. So if we go into user experiences, company branding, here we can actually non-standardize it, shall we say. We can customize the Microsoft login pages, the layouts, the templates, the look and feel, the headers. Please reach out to me if you'd like a demo environment to test this in. We can provide you a little demo environment you can have a play around with without touching the production environment. Once you've done that, it'll feel like a thing. So for the end user, this is a fantastic little area. So very easy place for self-service and self-admin. So as well as seeing my devices, you can see I can actually go and update my own security information, and I can utilize those sign-in methods that we just looked at. So if it's been made available, you can easily create standard operating procedures for end users, especially the young generation or more tech savvy, to go and set these up themselves. Uh, if we go, let's go back, right? The other thing that we can do is there's our password, etc. But we could actually see our sign-in information, recent activity. So we've got that information that's provided to us, and we can see any suspicious activities there, have a chat to IT. The other thing that I want to probably touch back on is, well, I covered groups earlier. So one of the key things around groups is that you can assign administrators, and these don't have to be IT, this can be business. So if this is a business person, they can see the groups that they own and they can manage those groups. So there's Contoso Marketing, and I can go and see the members. I can make them an owner. I can remove them. Right. So this is a very powerful thing for them to manage themselves. So definitely recommend you thinking about the group management aspect. As you start utilizing things like Microsoft Teams, this becomes very prevalent. So you can see I can request to join a group, etc. as well there. Now, there's a way that you can standardize or make it dynamic, these group memberships. We've covered the dynamic element of it, but getting familiar with groups, strong recommendation. The other thing to be familiar over here is my apps. So let me just get past this. As we become more cloud centric, whether that be outside facing applications, right, websites, etc., or internal facing places, right, we're now able to publish these out, and this My Apps will give you a nice idea of what you can do. Every single app that we put here, right, we can put security rules around those, so we can set up things like conditional access, etc. as well. So let's just go back to the admin portal, and let's talk about that already. So one thing over here in the protection side of things, there's a security center icon here. Inside there is a identity secure score. Now, I don't worry too much about these. They're just values in that. What I do like is the actions. So those of you that remember the old BPAs, the best practice analyzers, well, here is your identity BPA, and you can download this right here. Okay, so definitely recommend you downloading these recommendations and having a walkthrough with the team and setting it up. Now you can actually click on those and say, I've remediated it, I've accepted the risk, etc. Okay. The other thing to do is make sure that you've set up your named locations. This is now going to become prevalent. So a lot of people have set this up for MFA, trusted IPs. Okay. But now with sort of like the global traveling environment and locations that people work from, be worth having a think about those areas. Also, be aware that there is an element here to upload your certificates. So you can upload your certificate. So these are .crls, right? So you can do some certificate management over here as well. And then there's an element in this admin center that I wanted to cover that was around the conditional access, but I'm going to just really cover this around actually applications. I'll show this. I just showed applications that were shared out there. I want to show something real quick, just as a quick moment. So imagine that we have got a corporate Facebook account that is managed by marketing. Now, this corporate Facebook account has, a username and password. So do I share that same username and password with everyone in the marketing department that is working on this? If we publish our external apps through Azure AD, right, we can actually let Azure AD manage that. So here's our group that's allowed access to it. But what I can then do is actually I can put in the credentials. So Azure AD will be using these credentials that I put in here. So this could be, corporate account, etc., and the corporate password. I can delegate an owner of that, so people can manage that app as well, right? And do the role memberships, etc. So I showed you earlier. I'll cover some elements around sign-in. So in the portal, there's some good elements around logging. So what we've got over here is basically all of our logs, our audit logs. Let me just go back and get you I've shown you the user sign-ins, but I wanted to show to you the new feature that's been put in here, and that is called usage and insights. Now this is in preview. So what we've got here is a new capability that's come in and allows us to see basically successful or failed sign-ins to apps, ADFS activity, right? When was the last time? And that was service signed into, okay? And app credentials, so activities around it. So there's some new insights that have been fed into it. So we're starting to see a lot of information around it. Now, regarding the activity logs in Azure AD, okay, you can actually download those logs for offline storage. You can feed them into Azure Monitor. So if you've got the Azure environment set up, right, we can basically take the sign-in logs, the audit logs, the provisioning logs, for example, right? So if you've got log analytics set up, okay, you can hook that in. But these are all under monitoring health in the admin center. I did cover a bit about conditional access, but conditional access is a beast, I think. And I want to share some useful elements around conditional access. So a lot of people have implemented conditional access, but I'm not so sure that everyone has thought about this properly. So if you sit down with your IT team and you point to one of your CA policies in your environment and say, who created this policy? What was it created for? Have we got a logical element or a mapping that tells us why it was created, who it was created for, is there a lifetime on it, etc. So I would strongly recommend people think about documenting this policy, and it could be as simple as a spreadsheet, with some columns, right? And understand that the signals of what that looking for, right? Versus the decision, right? Allow or MFA block, etc., right? And the enforcement of it. Yep. You want to capture that. So here's a nice little article that gives you an understanding of how you can do it. And the other bit is this communication. So I think this one is such a shortly provided thing, but a lot of end users don't seem to understand what these conditions are in plain English. So documenting your policies and having a plain English is really useful for communicating that change and that behavior to the business. Okay. I've also provided some stuff that people benefit from. So there's a couple of things. These are two little GitHub articles on in here. Now, this is for creating emergency accounts. So if you get your CA wrong, you get your CA policy wrong, you can lock everyone out. Right? So you want to make sure that you've got the ability to get some access in. So there's a nice little article on that. And I've got another one that I think will be very, very useful. And that is basically how to back up and restore your conditional access policies. Right now, there's an approvals workflow in this. So this is a really cool piece of really cool guide. This gives you straight into Teams. So highly recommend you have a quick look at that. There is also something that is really, really exciting. I really love this product. It's not really part of the this webinar, but I still want to cover the capability that you can actually apply conditional access to Defender for Cloud Apps. So if you're not familiar with Defender for Cloud Apps, it's a CASB. It's an internet-based sort of like proxy solution, but with those conditional access policies, we can block downloads, cut, copy, paste of sensitive information. We can block uploading of documents to document sharing sites like box.net, etc. We can enforce MFA, right? So there's a very, very powerful element. So understanding your conditional access really helps you make the life easier for the end user. Let's really quickly run through Azure AD Connect. So this is your lifeblood, obviously, for syncing with your on-prem AD. I just want to cover a few things over here. So we should all be on version 2. Version 1 retired, I think about a year ago, just a little over a year ago. Now, AD Connect is the on-prem equivalent. There is a new version that's coming out, which is called Cloud Sync. So Cloud Sync is basically helps you understand, I suppose it's the future of AD Connect. It's got limited features, right? But it's improving all the time. Now we understand this is going to be the future of it. Okay, there's a nice little link that I provided in the slides to help you understand how to compare, right, to evaluate. So there's a little wizard here to check which sync tool would suit you best, kind of thing. Like I said, it's ever improvement. We should keep our eye out. The difference between AD Connect and Cloud Sync is that Cloud Sync is cloud-based. Okay, AD Connect is on-prem based, so it's MIM for those of you that are familiar with it. So Microsoft Identity Manager. The other thing that I want to highlight around AD Connect is make sure that you've actually put some, shall we say, coverage around that environment, because it is the sync engine to your cloud environment, and your cloud environment is becoming more and more important every day. Make sure that you are capturing the AD Connect configuration settings so you can import and export them. Okay. Have you hardened that AD Connect server? Have you set up a staging server? Okay. So for high availability, but more realistically for testing a new configuration, right? Or moving servers, changing servers. You want a staging server. So make sure that you've got some contingency planned around your AD Connect environment. And the other thing is there is some really good little agents that you can hook into AD Connect, and they are those health agents. It's part of your premium plan 1 things. So there are 3 agents. Okay, there is the sync agent, which basically tells you if AD Connect is running well or not, right? ADFS if you're running it, right? But the other one is your health agent for AD. Okay, so now this is actually a little cheat for me, because the health agent gives you a really good understanding of how your AD replication is going. So it's analyzing the logs from those, and it's giving you some really good feedback on how your LDAP is going, successful binds, etc. There's some really good information that it's capturing on the domain controller health status. So really recommend you think of this this health agent. So yeah, that's a really good tip there. I know we're pushing time, so let's go jump into the E5 thing. So Defender for Identity. We talked about AD. Now, those of you that have known this for a while know that Defender for Identity is the replacement for Advanced Threat Analytics. ATA used to be part of Plan 1. This is now part of Plan 2, or the E5 license. For those of you that aren't aware of it, what this does is it monitors your on-prem AD for threats. It looks at signals to identify and detect, help you investigate threats that are happening in your AD. And just to give you some context, right, of what those threats could be, right, I've provided a link to those type of threats. So there is a ton of these elements. So you can see, for example, brute force attack, golden tickets, a common one, isn't it? Set up a honey token account and then see if there's any activity around that. Identity theft kind of thing. So pass the hash. There's some tools out there that do things like that. So this is looking for it. Now, Defender for Identity is cloud-based, so it takes the information from on-prem and feeds it into the cloud, and it uses basically, it does all the analysis up there. So you'll need to install these agents on your domain controllers, and that has an impact on your CPU and RAM. So once you understand the architecture, I've provided the link to the capacity planning. So if your DCs are vCPUs, right, virtual machines, you can easily get an understanding. You can use a tool basically to size what you need to do to, they call it the sensors. I see them as agents. Okay. The other thing to think about this is make sure that you set up and schedule your reporting so that the reports that are coming from those environments are fed up into the cloud. So you can do this manually, you can schedule it, but I've provided a handy link. Some of the elements, other elements around the EM&S E5 is the identity protection. So this flies really nicely with Defender for Identity. I know it's confusing, right? But this is the cloud version of it. Basically, Defender for Identity is the on-prem that monitors the on-prem platform, and Identity Protection monitors your users when they're basically using a cloud environment. So what this is doing is it's looking for if users are trying to sign in from anonymous IPs, if there's password spray attacks, or even leaked credentials. So it's looking at not just doing it, but automatically remediating it. So like, for example, enforce MFA if I see you signing in from a dodgy address. Now this is, you'll see that there is, that I'll do, you'll set up a risk policy and a sign-in risk. Something that that comes up a lot in conversation is, what are these risks that Microsoft is always talking about, or is brought up in their system? So what I've done is I've actually provided the link to those risks. So this gives you an idea of what license you need, okay, and the type of risk detection that it's doing, and you can easily understand where it is. So for example, unfamiliar sign process is a real-time risk, so you need a premium license for that. And you can see the non-premium, and also there's a very handy list. There's a feature in Plan 2 called MFA registration policy. Okay, so it's that product over there, and what this is basically the ability for you to enforce MFA or and get users to basically register their register themselves for MFA. So this gives them, you can set it up to prompt users to register next time they log on. You know, they've got 14 days to complete it. Right, I provide a nice little link there. The other one that might be worth discussing or being familiar with the E5 is this access reviews, and this keeps coming up and cropping up in the admin center, and I'll actually show you that through, say, let's go over here and let's go to groups, and let's go to all groups. You can see it over here as access reviews. Okay, so what this allows you to do, and this is quite powerful, is that we can actually go into a specific group. Now imagine I've got a group that is shared with external people, okay, etc. But I can actually set up an access review on that, and I can decide, for example, I'm going to review guests, right? I'm going to basically review, do they still need it? And I can assign this to people, right? I can set settings in there. So for example, if I go guest users review, right, I'm going to say how long it is for, and then let's go group owners 3. Set that recurring to annually, sorry, and let's go into settings. And we can see, oh, I've clicked it, right? We can actually review if they haven't signed in within 13 days, we need justification, etc. Right? So we can actually go in and say, all right, if people aren't using it, why is it still here? It's a very, very powerful kind of thing. The final one, and I think everyone's familiar with PIM, but I'll cover it real quickly, is that privileged identity is where you can elevate access levels to the environment. So you don't need 2 credentials, right? You can basically have your own credential, and whenever you need admin credentials, and they don't have to be, global admin, you can basically request it. So I'm not going to set it up, but it is one of the key things. Now, be aware that privileged identity is cloud-based, so it works for Entra ID, Azure AD, Azure, Microsoft 365, and SaaS apps. Okay, you can do approvals, you can do workflows, you can enforce MFA, you can request justification, you can do just-in-time. Very powerful. And if you're thinking of a cloud-centric approach and phasing out, things off on-prem AD to the cloud, this is something that you really want to consider. Right. Final piece, right? This is the final bit. I promise that we're almost there. Okay, so this is a very interesting topic suite, and I want to cover this real quickly, but I want people to be aware of it. So in Azure AD Plan 1, a lot of people know what App Proxy is. App Proxy allows any on-prem web-based application to be published out, and you'd see it in, for example, My Apps. And then we can apply MFA, conditional access type of policies. So for those of you that aren't aware, you install an agent on any Windows server. As long as that server can see it, it will tunnel it through to the cloud. So this is a very, very fantastic way. But the only problem here was the App Proxy service was only doing it for web apps. Okay, so just a couple of months ago, there was a very exciting announcement that came out, and we're all quite interested in this. So there is 2 new offerings under this thing called Global Secure Access, and it's called Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access. And so if I just bring this up, Entra Internet Access allows you to provide secure access to the Microsoft 365 and SaaS and public internet apps, right? It's like a secure web gateway, okay? Now, there's a client, but if you don't want to do client, you can actually set up remote networks. So it actually has the ability for you to securely go to Microsoft. Okay? Now, the other one that's quite exciting is this one, and the private access allows you to go a lot further than web apps. This still uses the same agent as App Proxy, right? But allows you to access on-premise resources without requiring a VPN. So you can create multiple, you can create multiple dedicated tunnels that can do IP address ranges, that can do RDP, SSH, you can do file shares, you can hit ERP systems, you can even do printing and more. So you can do specific ports, etc. Right? And so we're just getting into the initial bits of this, but this is all in preview, so please take this with a grain of salt. We don't know what pricing is like at this stage, but it's very, very exciting to understand what these products are. So strongly recommend you get a feel for these, because we think that there is a challenge for VPNs coming up. So if you have a cloud strategic application strategy, this might be a very, very powerful way of securing that environment and getting everything all there. So that was a lot, wasn't it? Right. Let's just wrap up a bit here. When we come to streamlining identity management, okay, there's a number of things I've shared and showing you that you can do to streamline things, right? From the end user to app delivery to conditional access to getting rid of passwords to making your multi-factor authentication smoother, right? Enabling users to self-service password reset, which will actually sync back to on-prem, right? And having those elements for disasters, making sure you've got things like temporary access passes, you've got your conditional access policies backed up. So there's a lot of elements that you can align to streamline your identity environment. And remember, the whole focus and the whole focus of these group of webinars is about maximizing your investment in your M365. So we're not saying that all these things we've shown you is the answer. What we're saying is, without understanding what it is and its capabilities, how can you make decisions? So think of the intent here and understand if it meets your needs, right? Everything we try and do is obviously process driven, and that security, that alignment, the regulatory requirements, everything that we do, NCSC Cyber Essentials Plus, is aligned with those elements. Always remember, right, it's about positively influencing your users, your teams, and what they care about, especially the identity. The end user is the very first component of a cloud strategy. So making their lives easier to access the time, reducing that time to sign in, the effort it takes, giving them the efficiency to do it. There's a lot of elements that you can help to maximize those investments. Those investments are always monetary. It's also people as well. So some useful info. Look out for Ryan's email. He's going to be including the slides that have got all the relevant links, right, and the key bullet points. And if you want to speak to us directly, we'll email you after this session. So just reply back. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you've enjoyed that. But we'll share the recording and the slides in the next 24 hours. So once again, have a great day. Thank you.